A lot of people who come to my channel are in the process of waking up, and this can be a very confusing time. Everything is new. When someone begins to realize that, hey, the world is not what you thought it was, when religion taught you that it was a certain way, or your parents or school, everyone was telling you that the world is a certain way. And then at one point you started to realize that, hey, that's not the case. It's actually quite different. And everyone around you, sometimes it seems like they don't see it, and it can be a very confusing, very isolating experience. But we've talked about that a lot, this idea of waking up. But today we're talking about what comes next. What's next? Because this is a process, and waking up is just the first part. It's the very first stage. And this is uncharted territory for a lot of people, and it can be very confusing for a lot of people as well. And you have to be very careful, because there are two huge mistakes here at this point, in this moment, when one starts to wake up, that almost everyone makes, and this will limit your consciousness. And this is very important, because it's like you're starting to grow, but this will stunt your growth. So it's very important. Today we're talking about, after waking up, what happens next, this process of growth, and really important to avoid these huge mistakes that are made right here that will just trap you all over again. And you don't want to do that, because like I said, it's very confusing. You have, all these different religions and spiritual systems and gurus and all these different people, coming at you with different ideas. And it's very important to remain clear-headed, because what happened in the beginning, when you grew up, guess what happened? Your consciousness was trapped. Your mind was trapped by religion, or certain ideas given to you by your parents or the school. Your consciousness was trapped. So as you wake up to a new consciousness, you don't want it to be trapped again on another level. So anyway, we're going to talk about what's next, how to avoid these two huge mistakes, and what this process is. What is the next step in general? Very important stuff. Before we get started, I want to remind you, hey, if you enjoy my work, like and subscribe. It helps out a lot. And support over on Patreon if you can. It's very helpful, and it's what allows me to do what I do. And you'll get access to weekly secret live streams, a new members only video every single week, and you'll have access to all of them. You can get access to that by subscribing on Patreon at any tier, or tier 2 on higher, or higher on YouTube. Also, keep an eye out. There's a lot of scams in the comments. People pretending to be me, saying to join my WhatsApp or my Telegram. That's not me, okay? I don't have WhatsApps or Telegrams. I don't have those things. So that's a scam. Don't fall for that. Also, there are a lot of people out there who don't want our message to get out, and they're spreading misinformation and disinformation, a lot of crazy lies. So, use your logic, use your reason. Don't fall for the bullshit. All right, let's begin. So, what happens next? Like I said, you're waking up, and reality is very strange. It can be confusing, not knowing what to do, where to go. But this is a very important part, because it's where you're going to start to realize what you are, where you are, and why you're here. So it's very, very similar to what happens when, so think of it like this, because I know this is new for a lot of people, but this is a process that occurs. So think about when you started to, because what's happening is you're entering into a new level of consciousness. You have broken the bounds, gone beyond the boundaries of your old consciousness, because you realized that it was limiting, it was wrong, or it was not encompassing. It wasn't able to explain aspects of reality. So you've broken beyond the bounds of your old consciousness, and so you're stepping into a new consciousness. Now, this is very confusing, very disorienting. Why? Okay, so think about, when was the last time you stepped into a new consciousness? Well, when you became self-aware. You became self-aware when you were very young, when you were a baby. You became self-aware at a certain point. And what happens when you step into a new awareness? It's very confusing. The world is a strange place. You don't really understand what things are. You don't know what you are, where you are, why you're here. You don't know how to communicate. Everything is strange. Everything is foreign. So compare that to that's very, very similar to what happens when someone first starts to wake up. The world is very strange. It's not what you thought it was. Everything's different. So this is what happens when one steps into a new level of awareness. Very strange, very different. So what happened with you as a child? Well, you had to learn. You had to learn what things were. You had to go through this stage of understanding and communicating and learning. Well, same thing is going to happen here. You're going to go through understanding, learning, communicating, understanding what existence is, where you are, why you're here. You're going to be learning how to communicate with others who are at this level of awareness. Now, this is difficult because this level of awareness is very fresh for humanity. So people are all over the map. Think about it like this. Imagine if a bunch of babies grew up, but they didn't have anyone to teach them, or there wasn't a school system or anything. It would be extremely chaotic. You know, everyone who grew up would have, they would be self-aware, but they would have wildly different ideas. It would be very, very chaotic. So this is kind of the state that humanity is in right now. And this is why in our system, the Neogenian system, we provide a structure for navigating and understanding this consciousness. Because humanity needs a structure to navigate and understand this consciousness. Just like, you know, when children grow up, they need to go to school, learn how to read and write, communicate, etc. Same thing here, but at another level. It's just humanity is new to this, so that structure is what we are creating now. This is the structure of our system that allows one to navigate this new consciousness in the most effective way possible. And we'll get to that in a moment. So again, this is very, very important, okay? So it's this very disorienting level that one has reached. And one is in this process of trying to understand what reality is, what existence is, where you are. Everything is different. And I'm sure you've felt this. I mean, just objects around you are not what they seem. Previously, if you were a scientific materialism or an atheist, you believed that it was just material particles, atoms, and that was it. But when you have an awakening, you realize that no, it's not matter. It's not material atoms. Reality is so much more than matter, that we are eternal. And everything around us is not simply material atoms. It's something else. It's something else. And if you were a religious person, you thought that it was a creation of God. But as you wake up, you realize, oh, no, that's a lie. Religion is a lie. It's not a creation of God. So science is incomplete. And we know that for a fact due to the advent of quantum mechanics. Science can no longer explain what matter is. They have no idea what matter is. In fact, the founders and pioneers of quantum mechanics, which is one of science's most successful theories, such as Max Planck, Erwin Schrödinger, and Werner Heisenberg, all said that matter is unreal and that mind is primary. So these ideas that people have clung on to have been shattered. So you see where, and this is all going to connect. As I always say in my videos, the thing with my videos and what we talk about here, if anything ever sounds a little hard to follow in the beginning, it's like stick with it until we get to where you can see the big picture, and then it's kind of like a circle. You don't really know where you're going, but all of a sudden it'll wrap around and you can see the big picture and it all makes sense and it all clicks. So we have this idea of you growing up as a child, as a self-aware being, learning a structure to be able to navigate self-awareness. You're learning language, you're learning how to interact with people, you're learning what things are, what are objects, what are humans, what's culture, what languages. But now when you start to enter a new level of consciousness, which is beyond self-awareness, guess what? You realize that many of those ideas are false, are wrong. They were simply a model of reality that allows you to navigate it rather than reflecting what reality truly is. So it's very confusing. It's very strange, can be disturbing for some people. That's why it can be called the dark night of the soul, where you realize everything that you knew and you thought was wrong. And it's confusing because consciousness doesn't know where to go at this point. Consciousness is confused because consciousness needs a system to navigate reality. That's why kids always ask, what's this? What's that? Or if you give them an answer, why is this? Or I don't know. You ask you tell a kid something, the kid goes, why? It's like, oh, well, we don't hit other people. Why? Well, because that's not nice. Why? Well, because blah, blah, blah. Just why? Which is great. That's great. It's just to show that consciousness is constantly trying to answer questions, and understand reality to be able to navigate it. So when you start to wake up, consciousness has realized that its old model of reality doesn't work. And that's very shocking for consciousness. And so it begins to try to understand reality, but it doesn't have a framework or a model to understand reality. Again, it's like the child that is self-aware, but let's say there's no parents or adults to teach the child. Well, it's going to be very, very confusing for the child. And like I said, this is the area that humanity is in right now, where it's quite a mess, because you have all these New Age gurus and spiritual systems and all that, which now don't get me wrong, I don't want to knock them too much, because a lot of them are much better than, say, religion or whatnot, but it's very chaotic. It's, again, like children running around trying to teach each other, and it's just a mess. It's just a mess. There needs to be a way to understand reality in a cohesive way. So anyway, consciousness is trying to understand a model of reality, and its old model of reality has been broken, and it knows that no longer is sufficient, but it doesn't have a new model yet. So it's very confused, and it's trying to understand existence, but having a difficult time. You might try to communicate this to other people, but other people aren't that level of consciousness, so they don't know what you're talking about, and you feel crazy, but you're not crazy. You're just seeing what they don't, because you're at a new level of consciousness now. So what happens is that you have to unlearn all the things that you did learn. When I say unlearn them, it's not like you just forget them completely, but you understand them as models and conceptualizations rather than reflecting reality accurately. So you realize that certain things that you thought were true are not true, but they can still be helpful. But you see them at a new level. For example, the idea of you as the ego. When you were self-aware and simply self-aware, you thought, oh, I am John, and I am 22 years old and work at a bank. Well, that's not who you really are. You are an eternal being. That you is just an expression of yourself, a subset of you, one of many lives that you have had. Well, when you were just self-aware, though, that's who you thought, oh, this is me, I am John. Well, when you start to understand what reality is, you realize, oh, no, I am not John. John is my particular embodiment at the moment, but I'm an eternal mind, what we call a zeta, or a zetic mind. It has existed eternally across many lifetimes. I have expressed myself through many different forms, many different lives, many different avatars. So you realize that you need to see reality in a new way, but this takes needing a new understanding of reality. So the reason why I'm mentioning birth is because what happens after one begins or starts to wake up is a spiritual rebirth, a spiritual birth, or what we call a neogenesis. So this spiritual birth or neogenesis is the unlearning of all faulty programs and learning a new conceptual model of reality. And one has to do this, one has to destroy the old self and create the new self. So you are going through this process again that's very similar to a birth and a growth process. You had a birth and a growth process as a baby, and learning how to operate in a new consciousness. For you as a baby, then, you learned how to operate in a new consciousness, which was self-awareness. Now it's happening again. You have realized your old model is incorrect. So a new process that's similar has to occur right now. And here is the problem that most people have. Because, like I said, the world is not set up. The world is very unfamiliar with this consciousness. It's not many people who have stepped into and navigated this consciousness. Humanity is very, very confused about this. And so you have people all teaching wildly different things within this realm of a higher consciousness. So here are some extremely important things that one has to watch out for, okay? So now that you've woken up, your mind is searching for something stable, something to make sense of the world. So what can happen right now as well that you need to watch out for is isolation. Now, this doesn't happen to everyone, but after one begins to wake up, one can go through a state of isolation. The reason why this can happen, and this is not necessarily a bad thing as long as one doesn't get stuck there, because this happens during the phase of the dark night of the soul where it's very confusing. So it can happen that one goes into a state of isolation. Why? Because your mind is trying to find that conceptual model of reality. So it begins to isolate and reflect inwards and think and conceptualize and feel very alienated from others because others don't know what you're talking about. They have no idea. They can't understand. And your mind, unable to, consciousness, unable to communicate with them, gets frustrated and so retreats and internalizes. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. One does not want to get stuck here, but it can be a very difficult thing. It can be a very confusing time. And it's unfortunate that this happens in our world because in a new world, of course, we would have schools for navigating this new consciousness. So you wouldn't be isolated. Like it would be simply another step in the growth of a human. When someone reaches this level of consciousness, be like, oh, great. Now here's this whole community that also understands these things. Here are different schools and classes you can take, etc. And you can communicate with people and talk about it, and it's great. It's not this very strange thing where people look at you like you're weird and have no idea what you're talking about and think you're crazy, and very frustrating. But this can happen. This isolation can happen because the way that our world is set up right now, alienation can occur because people don't know what you're talking about, and you get frustrated and you start to internalize. Now, this can be helpful because this is when you start to, internalizing is good. Self-reflecting is good. And this is when you're really going to try and make sense of things. So here is the critical point, okay? Here's the critical point. So you're going through waking up. The next step is spiritual birth, spiritual rebirth, or what we call neogenesis. But here's the thing to watch out for. Consciousness wants a model of reality desperately. It needs it to navigate the world. It's in a very very uncomfortable state for not to have a model of reality to work with. So it's going to start looking, and like I said, isolation can occur because you start to internalize and think things over and try and figure things out. But what it then does as well is start to look for answers in a conceptual model in other places. And again, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but remember, we're in a world where this is very new and fresh, and a systematic way and healthy way and nurturing way of understanding this has not been established universally yet. And of course, this is what we are doing. This is why humanity needs a new beginning. We need a new earth through a new consciousness. But as of right now, someone coming to this, that is not obviously available. So they start looking for a conceptual model of reality, and things are a mess. There are so many different Eastern religions, so many different spiritual systems, so many different New Age systems, occultism, so many different books and beliefs, and etc. So what happens is that people look around, and because consciousness needs a model to work with, so people will adopt a model that consciousness is happy with or feels explains things enough, and then will remain in that sphere of that model. Now this is really important. This is key. This is what will determine your growth and your life and your level of awareness here. The problem is there's multiple problems that occur here. First of all, the systems out there are extremely limiting. Now, of course, not as limiting as religion or anything like that. And it depends which system. Some are more limiting than others. So you'll have some that get some ideas right. It talks about reality being frequencies and things like that. Reality being frequencies and us being eternal, reality being mathematical, some good stuff. But then it'll have crazy ideas too, like that you can hop timelines, or that the earth is flat, or that the moon is hollow, or whatever. It's all like crazy stuff. Again, think of the analogy as children kind of trying to figure things out, and then them trying to teach each other. They'd get some stuff right, but it'd get pretty crazy too. So again, that's where humanity is kind of at right now in their spiritual growth, in their mental growth, in their growth of consciousness. That's where humanity is at right now. And so when choosing a conceptual model of reality, consciousness will find one that more or less makes sense, but it will adopt all these crazy ideas and flaws. And this is a huge problem, because what's going to happen here is this is just going to start religion, but at another level. So it will be an improvement from religion, but it will start the difficulties that religion has just at another level. So one has to be very, very careful here. So here's the main point. When one is going through this process of spiritual birth, what we call neogenesis, what's critical is to operate your consciousness in such a way so that your consciousness understands that it has to know what reality is through understanding how reality operates. And to put it another way, it's that you don't want to go somewhere where people are telling you what to believe or what to think. That's like another religion. If people are telling you what to think, what to think, what to think, you want to know how to think. It's a big difference. You don't want to just dogmatically believe something some guru says. You don't want to dogmatically believe something that I say. You don't want to dogmatically believe something that an alien says or a God says or anything. You don't want to believe. It does not matter. It doesn't matter if it's God or an alien or a guru or a preacher or whatever. You don't want to believe something just because they say it. You want to know how to think. So this is the very important aspect that is key here. So when one is going through this process of neogenesis, it's about navigating, because your consciousness is looking for a conceptual model of reality. And so what you want to do is have consciousness understand directly what reality is and why it is, so that it can construct that model of reality for itself, or come to the conclusions for itself, and understand things, why things are the way they are. Because see, if you do this, now your consciousness is in a set of unlimited growth. Because when your consciousness adopts the model of reality that is what reality is and understands how reality operates, it can then begin to evolve and reach higher and higher levels of consciousness. See, this is key here. And this is what people don't do. Instead, they just subscribe to another belief system. Oh, this is what Buddhism tells me, or this is what this New Age person tells me, or this is what this tells me. They aren't understanding the mechanics of reality, or the way reality is. And so they're not doing the internal, they're just, oh, so-and-so said this, it must be this way. Oh, reality is frequency? Okay. Oh, the earth is flat? Okay. Oh, the moon is hollow? Okay. Now, reality is frequency. The earth is not flat. The moon is not hollow. But if one is just believing what someone says, consciousness is just going to take that in and adopt it. And so one wants to understand what reality is and how reality operates, so that you can go, oh, I understand why reality must be frequency. You see the difference? It's not like, oh, reality is frequency because so-and-so said so, or this ancient book said so, or this secret document said so. No, who gives a shit? It's, oh, I know that I know reality is frequency because I understand why it must be frequency. I know consciousness understands why reality must be the way that it is. So here are, and there's a lot here, but this is why it's so critical. And this stuff is real simple, but it can seem complicated if it's your first time encountering it. So if it seems complicated, just stick with it. It's really not. It's just like, again, consciousness is not used to this. So it's like going to school for the first time or something. It can be like, wow, this learning to read stuff is really hard. It's not really. It's just consciousness hasn't encountered this before. So this stuff is really when getting to a new level of consciousness is actually, I mean, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it shouldn't be as hard as it is. It's only so difficult because this is such an alienating world. No one understands it, and it's very confusing. Like I said, it's like having no schools or teachers or anything. It's a very, very confusing state. But so the two mistakes, all right? So here are the two things that are key. Okay, so the process of neogenesis is where you have to destroy your old conceptual model of reality and create a new conceptual model of reality. Or you could also say you must destroy your old self and create a new self. So there's a phase of destruction and a phase of creation. And this phase of destruction and phase of creation will result in you becoming your true self and stepping into your true self. So these are the 2 steps of neogenesis that almost everyone either doesn't do or they do so in an incomplete way. So the process of destruction and the process of creation. So the process of destruction is that you have to make sure that there are no limiting thought systems that remain. So what that means is that when you're waking up, you realize, oh wow, the world is a lot different than I thought that it was. So what you have to do now is make sure that all traces of faulty thought systems and faulty ideas are thrown out. So there's a lot of false ideas, like reality being material, or there being a God that created the earth, or whatever. There's a lot of strange things that people believe. So there's a lot of limiting thought systems that you had. And when you start to wake up, you start realizing, oh, what I previously believed was wrong. But you want to make sure, as you now begin this process of neogenesis, if you want to make sure that you can really expand into your full potential and reach higher levels of consciousness, because this is a process of growth. Think about how a child understands reality versus someone who's gone to school for a long time and they've learned a lot, they've expanded a lot. There is a whole growth process and many different levels of understanding that one can get to. So the first process is a process of destruction, where you have to destroy the old self, or in other words, destroy all faulty ideas about the world. Now, this is something that must be done and not just assumed. Like, you shouldn't just be like, oh yeah, sure. I thought reality was material and now I don't anymore, so I'm done. No, you have to examine them very, very carefully and make sure that no faulty ideas remain, no faulty thought systems remain. Because if they do, if you get rid of, let's say, 80% of them, well, that's great. But that 20% will be in your mind, and they will corrupt your future level of consciousness, because those ideas will be incorrect, but they'll be in there, and because your mind operates as a unity. Your mind is a holistic system. So if you have, so Descartes, it reflects Descartes' method of doubt. Descartes was the first modern philosopher, and Descartes wanted to understand how to understand what reality truly was. How he wanted to know how he could know that what he believed was true. How could he believe anything? How could he know for sure that what he believed was true? So what Descartes said was that, well, he wanted to examine all of his beliefs, and I'm going to summarize here, because this is something I could talk about for hours, but I want to get the main points here across. Basically, to examine all his beliefs and throw out every single belief that had any element of fault to it. So he used the analogy of a basket of apples. So Descartes said, if you imagine your mind as the basket and the apples as beliefs that you hold, so you have a basket and it's filled with apples. The basket is your mind. The apples are your beliefs. Descartes said, let's say that some of those apples are rotting. Well, what you want to do is you want to dump out all the apples, get rid of all the beliefs, then examine each apple one by one and look for any signs of rot. If there's no signs of rot, you put it back in. If there is a sign of rot, you leave it out. The reason why is because if even one of those apples has rot and you leave it in the basket, it will spread and all the other apples will rot. So if you have one faulty belief, it will spread and infect all, it can spread and infect all your beliefs. So this aspect is very important. Think of it kind of like a computer, and you want to install a new operating system or something, or let's say the computer has a lot of viruses on it. You want to get rid of all the viruses. If you get rid of most of the viruses, you're still going to have viruses on there that's going to spread and infect your computer. So this idea is doing a scan to get rid of all the viruses, checking your beliefs, etc., and making sure that there's no signs of rot, that there aren't any faulty beliefs. And like I said, nobody does this. Nobody does this. People don't do this. They just go, oh, they start waking up and trying to understand what existence is. And yeah, they'll throw out some ideas, like the obvious ones, but they don't do a systematic sweep, cleaning, deep root cleaning. And this is very important. Now, I kind of touched on it a little bit, how to do it, but to explain the entire process is not, I don't have enough time right now. Like I said, we want to have, systems and, we want to be able to teach people these things. And the process of doing it, it would take, maybe I'll do a video in the future on the exact steps to do it. I wrote about it in one of my books, but at least to say this is the step that must occur: an examination of beliefs and getting rid of all faulty beliefs, so that now you can begin the process of creating yourself. Now, when it comes to creating yourself, this is when you can think of it kind of like, okay, so you were wanting to install a new operating system on your computer. Well, first you had to get rid of all the get rid of all the viruses and then uninstall all the programs. Now you want to install a new program, a new operating system. Well, this is the process of creation. When you install this new operating system, you want to make sure that that operating system doesn't have any flaws. So you want to get rid of your old operating system and all the old viruses, because that would infect the new system, but you want to make sure the new system itself doesn't have any flaws. So what happens here is that we want to make sure it doesn't have any flaws, because that's going to limit your consciousness as well. And so here's the key thing is, so most people don't uninstall, don't get rid of faulty beliefs. They leave a lot of faulty beliefs in there. And then they go install a new system like Buddhism or some New Ageism or whatever. And now they have a system that is flawed, coupled with old beliefs that are flawed. And so you're in a better position that you were, but it's still, your growth will be stuck and you will be trapped. You will absolutely hit a limit where you're not able to expand consciousness anymore, because you are limited by the flaws in this new system, and you are limited by the errors contained in old beliefs that weren't properly examined and gotten rid of. And again, this is all a very systematic process, and it's important to come to these. Again, this is very new for a lot of people, like I said. So to a lot of people in the world, they don't even understand what a new consciousness is. It's like, oh, that's some weird, crazy idea. But for those of us who have gotten to this level of consciousness, we need to actually systematize it and set it up like a system where people can learn and understand and be cared for and nurtured and helped. That's greatly missing in the world. And we'll have a lot better place when we do that. So when one is installing or giving consciousness a new conceptual model of reality, like I said, what's really important here is where one doesn't just adopt a new belief system. No, don't do that. I mean, do what you want, of course, but please don't. Please. Because you're just trading one faulty system for another faulty system. Now, this faulty system might work better. There's a lot of systems out there that aren't perfect, but they're doing a good job. They're better than old religion, etc. So anyway, I don't want to get too much into that, but there's a lot of flaws, a lot of problems. So when you start to go into this process of creation, when you have gotten rid of your old belief systems, the key here is, like I said, learning how to think, not being told what to think. And so our system, the Neogenian system, this is why we are not a belief system, we are a knowledge system. And so what I always make a point in my videos is that in my videos, I don't want you to believe something just because I say it. I am not about telling people what to believe. I desire to give people the tools so that they can understand how to think for themselves. Because when people understand what reality is and know how to think for themselves and to truly understand how reality operates, well, we will all consequently be on the same page, because we will all come to the same understanding if one really does so. So now I know in a lot of my videos, I don't have time to get into the details of every single thing, or each one of my videos will be hours and hours and hours and hours long. But you can always find this information somewhere. I make it available. So again, very important that one doesn't just adopt a belief system, but rather understands how reality operates. And so this is sort of like becoming your own programmer rather than just adopting a program that someone gives you. Like, oh, here is, the New Age program, or here is this program, here is that program. You want to be able to understand how code works and be able to program it yourself. Now, I know that some of this might sound very, very dry and mechanical because I'm using like a lot of coding language and things like that. But it's a very exciting and interesting process. It just might seem like that way because I'm explaining it in a systematic way, because we have to approach it like a school system if we're to take it seriously, and we absolutely should. So there's this process of creation and destruction, and this leads to becoming. You have create, destroy, become. The process of creation, destruction, and creation leads to you becoming who you truly are. Now, of course, these are all metaphors. Really, this is a transformation. So it's a process of transformation. We can explain it in a real clear-cut way, like, oh, first you get rid of all your faulty programs, then you learn how reality operates, and then you do this in a very step-by-step way. But really, it's a lot more fluid than that. It's going to be a process of transformation where you are learning things and coming to an understanding, and then realizing certain ideas were wrong and getting rid of those ideas. So even though we can explain it in a real step-by-step way, it is a transformative process that's going to take time. And I've explained, I'll be explaining this process in more detail in other videos and whatnot. But it's important to understand, like I said, it's a transformative process. And this is a process that is really key. I have embodied this in ritual. If anyone has, I used to be on a TV show called Freak Show, and I did an act where I laid on a bed of razor blades, and I put a mirror across my chest, and I lifted a brick and dropped the brick, and the mirror shattered while I was laying on the bed of razor blades. And this was representative of this process. It represented me destroying my old self. So me laying on the razor blades and destroying the mirror was symbolic and metaphorical for me destroying my old self so that I can be free to create my new self. Now, of course, remember, don't do anything dangerous, right? I am a professional. And that's extremely, extremely dangerous. Don't do anything like that. You will die. Please don't. Don't do any, like I said, don't do anything dangerous. All of this is metaphorical. Okay? Be safe, be healthy. Now, you can also see this like reflected in the idea of Jesus dying on the cross. Jesus died on the cross. The old self was destroyed. And then the divine self was able to rise. The death of the old brought forth the symbolic arrival of the divine self. So again, and I just want to be absolutely clear, remember, all of this is metaphorical. Do not harm yourself in any way. Okay? This is about destroying old limiting systems, thought systems. I know that's probably obvious, but I just want to make sure that that's clear. So you want to make sure that there are no limiting thought systems, and you don't want to be trapped in any crazy belief systems or systems that are going to be limiting your consciousness. So here's what happens. You're going through this process. You start to wake up. Your consciousness goes, wow, what I thought reality to be, whether it was like matter or the creation of God or whatever, that's completely wrong. Consciousness is now very distraught because it doesn't have a model of reality to work with. It's confused. It starts to look for a new model of reality, and it starts to talk to its friends, and they don't know what the hell it's talking about. So at this point, it can isolate, goes internal, starts to think about things, tries to understand what existence is. It can be a very difficult time. And this might be fruitful somewhat. Then it will start to look outwards to other belief systems, books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the key part where one does not want to get trapped into another faulty system. One has to make sure that one gets rid of all old belief systems and then creates a new model of understanding reality, not from some prepackaged spiritual system or religion, but by understanding how reality itself operates. Because when you understand how reality itself operates, you will then be limitless in your conscious evolution. And that's important. You don't want to be limited. If you adopt any of these dogmatic systems, they might be better than what you had, but you're going to be limited. You don't want to be limited. You want unlimited growth. We are eternal, infinite, Zedic minds. We are eternity itself. We don't want to be limited by thought systems that do not have the power to allow you to reach your full actualization and potential. You want that available to you. And this is about knowing how to think rather than being told what to think. Very important, very important. And I can't stress that enough. And that's why I love when we do the live streams and we do the Q&A before and after, which is why you should come to these, by the way, because that part gets cut out. I love when I see questions that really show people are thinking about this, because I don't want people to believe what I say just because I say it. Oh, Morgue said this, so it must be true. No, I like when people think about it, internalize it, and start to examine it, see how it fits in, and that's what really gets me excited when I see people asking questions and wondering why. Like, oh, you said this, but why this? Instead of just going, oh, you said this, so it must be true. It's like, oh, you said this, but I don't really understand why. Can you like explain it to me? Why is it this way? That's great. This is good, because my goal and the goal of the Neogenian system, our goal here is to raise the consciousness of humanity. And guess what? People believing things dogmatically does not result in the raising of consciousness at all. What results in the raising of consciousness is humanity doing the work themselves and coming to realizations, having it all click. That's what raises consciousness. And that's, I think that is what a lot of people get tripped up on, is that it's not about just believing things. It's about knowing why things are the way that they are. You are not going to reach a new level of consciousness just by believing what some religion says or what some book says. You reach a new level of consciousness by, if let's say that what it says in that book is true, right? Let's say this certain book says a certain thing, and let's say that it's true. What what raises your level of consciousness is not reading it and just believing it. That doesn't do anything. What raises your level of consciousness is understanding why the book says that. It's like, oh, the book says that reality is frequency. Oh, okay, I believe that. No, it's not. But if the book says reality is frequency and you go, and you know why, I understand why reality must be frequency. See, this is what raises consciousness, that understanding, that click. Just simply believing something, it doesn't do anything. I mean, maybe it's better than like believing reality is made out of Jell-O or something. Like it's better, but it's not. You're not raising your consciousness. Raising consciousness raising goes when you do the work. Your mind has to do the work. It has to do the internal transformation where things fall into place, and you go, oh, I get why. Because if not, how are you going to know what to believe over another thing? You can use your intuition, and that's helpful, but you have to be guided by reason as well. And this is why in our system of meta-rationalism, which is very important to neogenesis, by the way, and again, too much for this video, but I'll explain that in another video, understanding reality rationally and guiding intuition via reason, understanding metaphysics rationally, and guiding intuition rationally is what allows one to understand existence through a knowing how it operates, rather than just simply believing something or something someone says. So I know I've said it a lot, but the reason why I say it a lot is because a lot of people miss this. And if consciousness wants a new model of reality, and it's going to look for something, and it might be like, oh, look, this system says reality is frequency. Well, intuitively, that seems to be in line with some experiences that I've had or intuitions that I've had. So yeah, okay, this system sounds good. All right. Well, this system also says that we should, hate like gay people. Oh, well, maybe that's true too. No, of course that's not true. We want to be, we support everybody. So you have to be careful because there are systems like that. I know that's happening in a lot of New Age systems, actually. A lot of New Age systems, a lot of spiritual systems. Yeah, they'll be like, oh yeah, reality's frequency or whatever. But those damn trans people, they don't reflect reality's blah, 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 or whatever. Some crazy ideas that are very dangerous. I've seen a lot of spiritual communities starting to have some really crazy right-wing ideas that are homophobic and racist and dangerous. So this is why one has to know how to think and not just believing what someone says, because you'll go, oh, well, this system says reality is frequency and that blah, 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 blah. But it also, but then how do you know these other things aren't true? And you might intuitively be able to navigate that, but unless one knows how to truly understand reality, there's going to be some error there. So that's exactly what needs to happen for your mind to reach a state where it's free to have unlimited growth, because there's so many more levels of consciousness. It's kind of like what one would be taught in kindergarten versus university. There's a huge range here. And we want to build a beautiful new world. And that can only happen through a new consciousness, so that we can have people begin to understand what reality is and what existence is. Because a new world can't exist until we reach a new consciousness. Just like beings that are not self-aware, beings that are just instinctual like animals or babies before they develop self-awareness, like that state of mind, that level where it's not self-aware yet. The beings like that, they can't build governments and cultures and societies. Of course not. You have to be self-aware to be able to build all that. Look at how the world completely changed when humanity became self-aware. Starts as an idea in the mind, concepts, then reality conforms to will. So when we reach a new level of awareness, hyper-awareness, and this is what will forming is about, reality will conform to our will when we reach that new level of awareness. And remember, this isn't just like, oh, well, it just happens. No, it's by us going out and creating it, but we have to have that idea in mind. We have to have that consciousness aligned. We have to be there to be able to create it. Just like non-self-aware beings can't create governments and cultures and societies, beings that are not hyper-aware cannot create a telecratic planetary civilization. A planetary civilization, hyper-awareness is required for that to be created. That's why this is so key. This is why spreading information and knowledge is so key. Everything starts out as an idea. So just keep that in mind. It's very, very important to remember that everything begins as an idea and that everything happens because of this. This is all us. This is all what we are. Existence isn't something separate from us and outside of us. Existence is what we are. We are existence. The new beginning isn't something that's going to happen apart from us. It is what we are. We are the new beginning. We are Neogenians. So really important stuff. I know it's a lot to take in, but we're going to have a lot more information coming soon. And hey, be careful out there. There's a lot of crazy shit. Be aware, be open-minded, but be on guard as well. And hey, this is what it's all about. So let's start spreading this information, spreading this knowledge, because humanity is in a real shitty state and we need a new Earth. And we can have it. We can have it as soon as we decide to, as soon as you decide to. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to us. So let's do it now. We can. We have the power to do it now. So let's do it. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to wrap this up. There's a lot more I could say, but check out, I have a lot more videos and more stuff coming soon that will be on this topic. So if you enjoy my work, please like and subscribe and support over on Patreon. And it helps out a lot. Remember, you don't have to, though. I never want anyone to feel pressured to donate monetarily or whatever, but it helps if you can. So shout out to everyone who does, and you get access to members only videos every single week. So I want to give a shout out to Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Fairies of Venus, DB, William, Enki, Nocelina, Jose, and everyone else. The link is right over here, or you can hit the join button right below this video. Thank you.